We're going to look at Adobe Premiere Pro CS6 version, and this is a beginner intro to the program if you've never used it before. When you first open Premiere Pro, it's going to ask you if you want to open a new project, open project, or help menu. So you're going to click New Project. This is very important. Here under Location is where everything saves your Adobe Premiere file. You want to make sure that it does not save under an area that it will get wiped out like this one. So you want to click Browse, and just as a general rule of thumb, you want to keep everything into a file together. You don't want stuff all over your desktop because if things get moved, it will be impossible to find everything. So I've created this folder called Editing Practice. So I want you to do that too. Create a folder on your desktop called Editing Practice. And I'm going to call it Editing Practice. And I'm going to click OK. Before I click OK, just make sure that these are the settings that you want here. Scratch this are where some cache files get saved. More about that later. We're going to click OK. And as we talked about in class, the NTSC is Canada's broadcasting format. Now with the new devices and cameras, the HD version makes the titles look very, very blurred out in this format. So we've discovered that the DVC Pro HD is better. So we're going to do 1080i and then make sure this one's 60. So pause the video now and open a Premiere file with this setting here. Okay, so hopefully you've opened your own Premiere file and you're ready to go. Premiere is a very large program, and so it takes a few minutes to open. So while we're waiting for it to open, you're going to save 3 images of 3 different animals to work with. So I've already saved 2. So the third one, I just wanted to show you, when you type in the animal that you want a picture of, you need to make sure, if you're working in Premiere and you're saving items off the internet, make sure that you're using the proper usage rights, and click Tools and click Large, okay? Because if you use anything less than large in Premiere, it's going to be very grainy, very distorted, and low quality. A lot of people make the mistake of right-clicking on these and saving them. You're actually only saving the icons, and it's not the full version of them. So I'm going to click this one and wait for it to be full res. I'm going to right-click Save Image As and save it into my Editing Practice folder. I'm going to call it Eagle. So pause the video now and save 3 different pictures of animals to work with just for this activity. Okay, hopefully at this point you have 3 animal pictures. So when we're looking at Premiere Pro, it's important to understand what each window is. So over here, when you import your items, they're going to pop up in a source window, but we haven't imported anything yet, so let's do that first. So I'm going to go File, Import, and you can import more than one thing at a time. So I'm going to import, I'm going to hold Command and import all 3 at once. And it's important to understand that it doesn't actually import them. It just creates a short, like a link to it wherever it is on your computer. If you move it from the folder it's in now to another folder, it will disappear your next time you open it. So I'm missing my oh, here it is. So I've got my project file up here. That's where I like to have it. I think when you open Premiere for the first time, it'll be down here, but I like to move it up here. So when you have one item, you can double click on it and it opens a source window. I'm just going to dock my source window if it will let me here. I'm not sure why it's not letting me, but we'll just put it up here for now for a second. So this window is where you kind of select out of your rough footage what you want. So I'm going to hit I for in, and it marks a little in point here. So if this was a video and the first little bit was not part that you wanted, you would hit I for in here. You can always move it later. If you decide on the timeline you want to move the in point, that's fine. And then you can move your playhead. This little guy right here is your playhead, and there's a playhead down here on the timeline. So you're going to move it forward to wherever you want your source to finish and hit O for out. Now I want to show you a fun trick. Like, let's say you hit I for in. Let's say you want this picture to be exactly 4 seconds. You're going to press plus 400, enter. Oh, you know what? It's not letting me on my laptop here. On your Mac computer, what you want to do on the keys to the far right of the keyboard, press plus 400, enter. Don't use the enter in the center of the keyboard, use the enter the far bottom right, and it will jump the playhead exactly 4 seconds. Now we can adjust it on the timeline on my, because I'm using a laptop, I can't get to those functions. But we're going to hit O for out. Now when you have the part you want selected, you're going to put your mouse up here, click and hold, and drag it down to your timeline. Okay? Now this window here is your timeline. This window shows you all your good pieces that you've compiled on your timeline. These are your tools. This is your audio meter. And in here are some windows. You're definitely going to be using the effects window and history. So if you need to go back and see kind of what you did or where you made a mistake, you can click on history. If you need to undo something, Command Z will undo, and if you keep tapping Command Z, it will keep going back as far as you need to go. Now on your timeline, you'll notice you'll have 3 video tracks. You can always add more, and down here you have audio tracks. So here on the video track, this right here is your zoom in and zoom out. If you hold on this button, you can zoom in and zoom out. So pause the video now and import your 3 pictures and practice putting in and out points and zooming in and zooming out on your timeline. Okay, so once you have practiced with those things, you'll notice that sometimes when you add a picture to your timeline, it's not the right size. If it's not the right size, let me just import my other 2 pictures. Now you can just drag things directly to your timeline and cut them up there. I don't recommend it because it will be too long. So I'm just going to quickly hit some in and out points and bringing my items to the timeline. I'm just going to zoom out a bit too. And I'm going to add my giraffe here. In and out. Now, even though I've set in and out points on my pictures down here, I can always, when I move my mouse and it becomes that red arrow, I can change the in and out points as much as I want. Okay? Now, if you've brought your photos down to your timeline and they're not the right size, you can hold Control and scale to frame size, or right click. Or you can draw a box around all of them and do it all at once, scale to frame size. Okay? And it forces it to be the same size. Now this guy is not the right size, so I'm going to click scale to frame size. So now he is. If you see a red bar here, that means that the format of your content is a different format from that of your timeline. So you'll need to make sure this render bar, this is a render bar, make sure the render bar is over top of the entire area that's red, and hit enter. And it's going to go through what's called a rendering process, and what that means is it's going to convert your files to match the format, so it will be in total good quality. So if it looks grainy or it doesn't look right or isn't processing at the right speed, that's probably what the problem is. So depending on how much is on your timeline, the rendering can take a long time. Hopefully for this activity it won't take that long because you just have a few pictures on there. But let's say you're doing a special effects compilation and you just want to see a certain part. That's when you would shorten your render bar and just put the render bar over top of what you want to see at that moment. Therefore you're not wasting so much time rendering the entire thing. So now that I have my pictures here, what's great about editing is we have the freedom to move things around as freely as we want. So let's say I want my walrus to be the beginning picture. I'm going to move this over here. And you see that black line that just appears there? That's called the snap tool, okay? If you are trying to do that and you don't see the black line, the keyboard shortcut on your keyboard is S to turn it on or S to turn it off. So if you're not seeing that black line, which you should, make sure that the S is pressed in on your keyboard. And you'll be able to make sure that those are right up against each other, okay? We don't want any black frames in between. Those are called flash frames. So let's say we want to add 5 seconds of black at the beginning of our video. You can either move your scrubber or your playhead forward until this says 0500. Remember, this is hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So you move the playhead forward until it says 0500. If you're using a desktop Mac, you can do the +500 on your keyboard, enter, and the playhead will jump to that. Now I'm using my arrow keys on my keyboard to be more precise. So now my playhead is showing me where the 5-second mark is on the timeline. So I'm just going to move it so that it starts here, okay? So pause the video now and make sure you've got 5 seconds of black at the beginning and practice moving some clips around on the timeline. Okay, so over here in the effects menu, we have transitions and effects for video. A transition is how we move from one clip to the other, and an effect is how we change the look of the actual clip. So we want to add a nice dissolve here, because right now if I hit play, so I can hit play here or I can hit the keyboard, the space bar on the keyboard to play. So I can watch my timeline right now as it is. So you never want your video to cut in unless you're editing something that you want to immediately come in with the music or something. Normally we want to dissolve in. So under video transitions, open up dissolve, click and hold on this icon and drag it over here and on top of the walrus so you see that green box, and let go. So now if I hit play, it gently dissolves in, which is really nice. You can also click on the transition and manually make it longer or shorter if you need to. Okay? Now you'll notice it needs to be re-rendered. This red bar just appears, but we don't need to do that right this second. You can also add different types of transitions in between the other ones just to practice. So, you know, we can add this one. You don't want to get too fancy. You don't want the attention to draw away from your videos. So I mean, really, you want to stay with gentle, like that was a bit too flashy for my taste, but it's important for you to learn the program and all the different things that you can do. If you're doing something really exciting, then you might want to do some more flashy transitions, okay? So pause the video now, add cross dissolve transition to the beginning and the end, and a transition in between each of your pictures. Okay, so now we're going to look at how to import audio. So I'm just going to actually see if I have any audio on my computer. If I don't, I'm going to have to pause this video and add some. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Okay, we'll get some Linkin Park in there. So audio imports exactly like video. Make sure that all of your source files are in one spot on your computer, and once you've imported them, don't move them. If you do, you'll see a question mark come up instead, and if that happens, just right-click Link Media. This will be highlighted when it's not linked, and you just tell it where it is again if you've moved it. So here I'm going to move this audio down here. You can double-click on it and set your in and out points, but I'm just going to add this here. So if we want to have our music come in here right before the video takes place or comes in. There are two ways to have your audio fade in. The first way is to open up audio transitions and crossfade and add an exponential fade to the beginning of it, and that has it come in. Now if I open up this arrow here, the music actually does, I'm just going to zoom in here a bit. The music actually doesn't start until right here, so I'm just going to clean that up a little bit, shorten it, and drag it back here. And now I'm going to add the exponential fade to the beginning of it. Okay, now the other way is to do it manually. So if I click on the audio so that it's highlighted, you'll see this little diamond come up. These are called keyframes. And keyframes are little control knobs. So I'm going to add a little keyframe here and a keyframe where I want it to be full volume. And I'm going to grab this knob and I'm going to pull it all the way down. So you can see here where it starts and it gradually comes up. I like to, personally, I prefer to do it manually because I like to control when it comes in, when it goes out. Okay, so right about here, I want my audio to fade out. So I could zoom all the way out, trim my audio, or I can use this razor tool here and I can cut it and delete the part I don't want. And I'm going to add my knobs again, my keyframes, to fade it back out. Oopsie. Okay. So now if I watch it, and it should fade out at the end. Okay. Now the next thing I want to show you how to do is to do titling. So to add titles in Premiere Pro, you're going to go to Title, New Title, Default Still, and click OK. That's not where you make the title, this is where you make the title. By the way, you should pause the video now if you haven't already and put in some audio and fade it up and fade it down. If you are in my classroom right now and you don't have audio on your computer, let me know and I'll airdrop some to your computer to practice with. Okay, so here on the text tool, you're going to click and I want you to write your name. So I'm going to put my name and editing practice. Okay. Once you've typed what you want to have, up here is where you can change the font type. Okay, now do you see this yellow highlighted piece around the fonts? Once that's highlighted, you can use the wheel on your mouse to quickly drag through the different font types so you can see them faster. Once you have a font type you like, this is where you change the size. Now you can just click and type in a number, or you can click and hold it and then drag your mouse. Here is where you change the color of your font. And there's all different types of things that you can do to change the look of your font or the look of your titles. Okay, this is where you center it. Now this only centers it within the text box. What you need to do if you want your titles to be absolutely centered, both vertically and horizontally, is to right click, position, horizontal center first, and then right click, position, vertical center. And that makes sure, if you do both, it makes sure that it's dead center. So once you have your text finished, what you should do is pause the video now, open up the title tool by going Title, New Title, Default Still, click OK on the little pop-up that comes up, and then it will come up here. Put your name, editing practice, play around with the different settings, make sure you know how to work it. Here is where you add outlines to your text, get it to look the way you want it to look. Right click, position, vertical center, and horizontal center. And then when you're done with it and you're happy with it, close it. So go ahead and pause your video now and make yourself a title. Once you have your title, it'll pop up here, and you can drag it down to your timeline and cut it up as much as you want and make sure it fades in and fades out. I want you to put your title on the end though. Take this cross dissolve out. Okay, so now I've got my title here. So that's how you make titles, okay? So that's it for the basics of the editing program. If you wanted to make a title over top, for example, if you wanted to say eagle here, you want to make sure your playhead is over top of the picture before you make your title. So you're going to go, if you go title, new title, default still right now, and click OK, the picture of the eagle will be there. So therefore you can fit the text where you want it to go. I should also mention that these boxes are called the title safe zone. And you need to make sure any text you make are inside the innermost box, otherwise it could get cut off on some TVs. So let's say I want to write eagle, and I want it a little bit bigger. Happy with it, I'm going to click close, and I'm going to drag it on top of the eagle here. Okay, and it was a bit too long, so I need to make sure that it matches my clip. There. Okay, so go ahead and practice with this program. These are just the basics, and let me know if you need any help.